Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Max Bankman, I'm the new doctor.
Welcome aboard the Odyssey.
ABC Thursdays.
This ship is heaven. We're tending to our passengers' dreams. I'm in.
From 911 executive producer Ryan Murphy comes a splashy new drama on a luxury cruise ship with Joshua Jackson and Don Johnson.
It's your job to keep everyone alive.
She's in VFib. 1, 2, 3. Clear.
I have a pulse.
You're going to be okay.
Dr. Odyssey. Thursdays, 9/8 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
In the wake of the NDP ending its agreement to keep the Trudeau government afloat, opposition parties have been jockeying for position as power brokers, trying to advance agendas to either stave off or force an election. The Bloc Quebecois has seized the opportunity on a couple of files, including a pricey increase to pension coverage that was supported by the NDP and the Conservatives. I'm Dave Breckenridge, and this is 10-3. National Post politics reporter Catherine Levesque joins me to discuss whether the Liberals will accept the wishes of the House, why the Conservatives voted in favor of this increase in spending, and whether it pushes us closer to an election this fall. Don't forget, you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. I'd love it if you could leave us a rating, a review, and tell your friends about the show. So, Catherine, a few weeks ago, the NDP announced they were stepping away from essentially their confidence agreement with the Liberal government, opening the door to the possibility of not only a fall election, but just even more saber rattling in the House of Commons. And that's exactly what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. I mean, for starters, we have the Conservative Party, which instantly said, all right, let's go. How do the Conservatives proceed in this new landscape?
Well, I think the Conservatives are going to take every occasion they can get to try to trigger an election. And that's exactly what they've been doing from the get-go. So, you know, with the NDP not supporting automatically this government anymore, I mean, the Conservatives have really taken this as a window of opportunity. So in the House of Commons, opposition parties have what we call opposition day motions. So basically what that does is that any opposition party can use a full day to trigger a debate on a subject of their choice. It can be, you know, a range of issues. So what the Conservatives have decided to do, essentially since the start of the session about a month ago, is they decide to use every one of their opposition day motions. They have a total of 5 this fall session to trigger a confidence motion, basically essentially saying that the House of Commons has no confidence in this government anymore. So they've been kind of using that to try to trap the NDP in a way and, you know, try to say, well, see, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is still supporting this Liberal government. And, you know, same thing for the Bloc Quebecois. They're still supporting this Liberal government. And they hope that eventually one of these motions will eventually trigger an election, similar to, frankly, what we saw in 2005 with Paul Martin. It was a very similar situation. So I think they're hoping to recreate this scenario where maybe we could have an election, this winter.
And, you know, while they've been so far unsuccessful in terms of their opposition motions, they're not the only party that's been suggesting that they're ready to bring down the government. The Bloc Quebecois is also keeping that option open, and they even laid out the framework in late September under which they would continue to support the government or bring the government down. What demands has the Bloc leader made of the government, and what deadline has he given the Prime Minister?
Right. So the Bloc decided to use this window of opportunity to try to advance some of their files that they find are important. So, you know, basically their rationale was that, well, you know, this is the return of a minority parliament, effectively, right? Because the NDP is not supporting automatically this government anymore. So the Bloc has been trying to convince the government to pass 2 of their what we call private members' bills. So those are bills that have been presented by MPs from opposition parties. The first one is a bill to increase old age security for people aged 65 to 74. So a few years back, what the Liberals did is that they actually increased the old age security pensions. Those are pensions for seniors, for people aged 75 and up. So they gave a 10% bump because they say that, at that age, well, you're more vulnerable. Maybe you have less savings. So, you need that extra money to be able to live. So the Bloc is trying to also get that 10% bump for, people aged, all seniors effectively, 65 and up. And the second bill that they've been pushing through is a bill to essentially protect the supply management system. So everything involving eggs, dairy, and poultry, so chicken, turkey, and other meats, from future trade negotiations. So what is interesting with that is actually that's a bill that has passed through the House of Commons. It actually received support from the government and even a number of conservatives. They've been divided on the issue. But so what the Bloc has been asking for a few weeks now is they want both of their bills to pass in the House of Commons, in the Senate, and to receive royal assent to essentially become law before October 29th. So this is pretty fast. They basically gave a deadline just before Halloween, and they're saying, well, we want these bills to be passed. If not, we will start negotiating with the Conservatives and the NDP to trigger an election. So we could find ourselves in a scenario where in 3 weeks' time, these bills might not be passed. I think at this point it's very unlikely that will happen. And we'll see the Bloc kind of, switch their position and say that they also want an election. So we could be in a situation where they vote with the Conservatives to trigger an election. That being said, I don't want people to panic. That doesn't mean there will be an election automatically. They also need the votes from the NDP to be able to trigger said election. So I think we'll see, in the next few weeks, a game of negotiations, should this parliament go ahead.
Why are those the issues over which the Bloc wants to either force the government's hand or potentially bring down the government? Are these issues that especially play to the base of the BQ?
Yeah, I would say yes, but also, it also affects a number of other Canadians. I found it interesting because it's not just only for Quebecers, right? I mean, OAS applies for every Canadian, so they've been pushing for that. And they've been pushing for that for a while. On getting seniors' pensions a little bit higher. I'm also told there was a big debate in the Liberal caucus about that when they decide to raise the old age security pensions 75 and up, right? A number of Atlantic Canadians, MPs from Atlantic Canada, for instance, this is an area where there is a larger proportion of seniors. They were also pushing, to not create like two classes of seniors, right? So they really wanted this bump for everyone, age 65 and up. So essentially, yeah, the Bloc has been pushing that for a really, really long time. They finally want to see this succeed before the Liberal government falls. And the other issue, supply management, of course, in Quebec, there are the dairy lobby is very strong. The agricultural lobby also very strong. But I think, especially in Quebec and Ontario, supply management is a huge factor for a lot of regions. And I think a lot of farmers are really tired of seeing that supply management is a bargaining chip in trade negotiations. What we've seen in former negotiations is that, there were some concessions that were made. So essentially what the Bloc is trying to do is to make sure that there are no more concessions that are made on the world stage, when we negotiate with other countries. And, with NAFTA negotiations, we'll have to renegotiate NAFTA in about 2 years. That is something that they're afraid might happen. So they're afraid that we will have to concede some more territory, so some more concessions on supply management. They want to stop that.
We'll be right back. Looking at the pension aspect of it, I mean, this is as you say, affects a lot of Canadians and would ultimately come with a pretty significant cost. How much would that change cost the federal government, and where does it leave the federal government? Is it just a situation of, okay, we're going to say, no, we're not going to implement this now. Do what you will, or yeah, okay, fine. We're going to call your bluff. We're going to do it.
Yeah, so this is a huge amount of money. Let's be clear. The parliamentary budget officer estimates that what the Bloc is asking for would actually cost about $16 billion over 5 years. So this is a significant amount of money. Just, to put things in context, old age security is actually, so that involves, pensions, but also what we call guaranteed income supplement, which is, some money that we give for lower income seniors. That is the biggest expense in the federal budget. Just this year, we're talking about $80 billion. And this price tag is supposed to go up significantly in years to come. Just to give you some perspective, by 2028, OAS will cost us $100 billion per year. And by 2055, when you and I will benefit from it, probably, this will cost taxpayers $234 billion per year. So that is a huge amount of money. And, with baby boomers retiring, I mean, less and less people are contributing to the bill. So I think, it really leaves Liberals in a position where they had to, say a firm no to this. And they argued that actually this is not respecting intergenerational fairness, that this is a lot of money. And this would actually give more money to seniors who sometimes don't even need the extra money. OAS, you can get it if you make less than $143,000 per year in income. So, a lot of seniors would end up actually getting a bump when they don't actually when they don't actually need it. And when a lot of young people are unable to afford a home, for instance. So the Liberals have said no. Interestingly enough, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but the Conservatives have actually accepted the Bloc's proposition. They voted for the bill previously, and they actually voted for the Bloc's motion last week. And that has created, a bit of, some that has certainly sparked some questions, I think, in some Conservative circles. But for the government, I mean, they have said a firm no. I think they're trying at the moment to find maybe a possible compromise with the Bloc to, not trigger an early election, something maybe to do with giving more money to low-income seniors, people who actually need it the most, maybe boost the guaranteed income supplement instead of the OAS. That could be a solution, and frankly would cost a lot less money.
One of the interesting pieces of this was the fact that the Conservatives voted alongside the Bloc in the NDP. And when you look at the Conservatives, this is a party that has played up the Trudeau government's overspending, and it also features a leader who's tried to attract younger voters into the fold. And so I guess a lot of people were left wondering, especially on the Conservative side of the ledger. I believe there were some Conservative commentators who were questioning why they did it. Like, why did the party vote in favor of something with such a hefty price tag, especially when they want to bring down the government? And what was their rationale in this case?
That's a very good question. I've been trying to get a clear answer, but, based on my conversations and, what I managed to gather is that essentially, they don't want to be seen as against seniors, right? I think this is, they're trying to form government. They're trying to, shore up support in all sectors of society. And so for a lot of MPs, they were concerned that they would be seen as, opposing more help for seniors at a time where, they're saying that the Trudeau government has increased cost of living, where, a lot of seniors are now relying on food banks and, have difficulty feeding themselves. So that was part of it. The other part I would say is that, they also want the Bloc to vote with them, to try to trigger an election. So I think that's also a big part of their thinking right now is, they would like the Bloc to actually push for an election with them and to to have one, sooner rather than later. So I think it's a bit both of that. That being said, I did go back to the debates on this motion, and I was trying to understand why Conservatives would vote that way, if they had a rationale. And I think they were really pushing this message that, the cost of living has been soaring because of inflation, and that this is all the Liberals' fault, and so that they want to help seniors. There was a lot of that. What I also noticed is that it was mostly Quebec MPs on the Conservative side that were kind of taking this message to heart and kind of pushing that. So it was like they were replying to the Bloc Quebecois and trying to be on the same side of them as them, but also, saying that we should actually have an election for seniors to have a choice, right? And to be able to vote, for Conservative government. So, but yeah, you're right there. This has sparked a lot of questions. I think a lot of MPs are left kind of wondering what this means, if this will have any effect on the next election. Will young people ask them questions about this? And certainly we've been met with a lot of silence, I would say, from MPs. A lot of MPs did not want to comment on the issue, or were kind of shaking their heads when we were asking them, well, you want to fix the budget and, you want to maybe eventually balance the budget again. How are you going to do that when, you've essentially agreed to an extra $16 billion over 5 years? And there's actually just one MP who gave maybe a more honest response. And it's actually Pierre Poilievre's Quebec lieutenant. His name is Pierre Paulus. And he said, well, if we do that, we're going to have to find some money somewhere else because we can't pay for everything. So he was acknowledging that basically the principle of, finding a dollar in savings when you have, a dollar and spending, well, that would probably apply if they decide to go ahead. But let's be honest, if the Conservatives do form government, I don't know if they will go ahead with this. I don't think so, because because it involves a lot of spending, because, Pierre Poilievre will have to make a lot of choices on social programs that are already very expensive and are costing a lot of money, but also because just a few years ago when he was in the Harper government, he was actually advocating that OAS should apply for, people aged 67 and higher. And he was kind of talking about this intergenerational fairness. So he was, he had a much different discourse. And frankly, up to now, it's kind of hard to know exactly what the Conservatives think about this. But we'll have to see what they do, if they do anything in government about this.
Mm-hmm. And so let's say that the government doesn't implement this by October 29th, and there's conversation around a non-confidence motion and bringing down the government. There's been rumors out there or discussion out there that the Prime Minister has one more arrow in his quiver, and that's the notion of proroguing Parliament. Is that something that is being seen as a serious option right now? Is that something that the government may consider, or is that still one of those question marks out there that more in the circles on the outside of politics are talking about?
Certainly in the Ottawa bubble, there are some rumors floating around about maybe a prorogation happening in the next few days or next few weeks. Because right now, I mean, the Liberal government is not in a great position. It's down in the polls. It's unable to do anything right now. I mean, certainly there's this ultimatum by the Bloc Quebecois, and let's be honest, I don't think those two bills will go ahead, and I think the Bloc will be pushing for an election, sooner rather than later. But right now, what we see in Parliament is that Parliament is ground to a halt right now because there's what we call two privilege motions brought by the Conservatives, and we might be stuck into this for weeks still, and that makes so what happens with privilege motions. And it's, related to the Green Slush Fund, and it's a clean tech fund that has been, kind of covered in corruption and has since been closed, essentially. But right now, the government is unable to pass any legislation, to pass anything. And so we're in a situation where Parliament is stuck at the moment, and the government isn't able to accomplish anything. So, yeah, I mean, certainly the question has been asked for a few weeks now. Until now, the government has always said that no, they don't intend on proroguing Parliament, but ultimately that decision is for the Prime Minister to make. He could decide in a few days or in a few weeks that actually Parliament will be prorogued and it'll be like a reset. So when there's a prorogation, I mean, essentially you just stop all the work of Parliament, all the bills that were on the order paper die, and you kind of start over and you have a throne speech and you have a new cabinet shuffle and, all these things as if this was a new government. And it's something that they have done in the past. It's not something that they haven't done before. They prorogued during the We Charity scandal in 2020. And so they could be tempted to do that again, to try to, give themselves a new win, to try to make Parliament work again for a few more months just before an election. So, certainly, I will say that this is a very active rumor. Until now, I haven't seen anything to suppose that this will be the case. But yeah, this certainly is creating a lot of chatter here in Ottawa.
Yeah, lots of chatter in Ottawa, lots of chatter elsewhere in Canada. I know we'll be following this story closely over the next few weeks to see what happens with these kind of block demands of the government. And we'll see, perhaps we'll be going to an election before Christmas. Catherine, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Dave.
10-3 is produced by Sean Knox. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Thanks to my guest, Catherine Levesque. More from her and more politics coverage at nationalpost.com. I'm Dave Breckenridge. Thanks for listening.